I'm going to waste no further time in calling on our next speaker, Dr. James Otieno, who was a technical expert leading a team scrutinizing the technology of the IEBC at the Supreme Court process.
My name is Jim Otieno. I was contacted by Gladwell to help with the scrutiny. I think that was on 29th that I got in touch with Gladwell. I gladly flew to Nairobi, and I think I remember arriving in the morning, and the scrutiny was beginning at 9 a.m. So I headed straight to Anniversary Towers, and there we were from 9. There was the registration that we did. After the registration, the registrar told us more or less gave the order of the day, how things were going to be done. Our passes were processed for the Supreme Court. And there are whole lots of politicians who'd come to witness the occasion, from both petitioners and also from the respondents. Just as we wait for that to go up, my main take, one of the things that actually I need to mention this right up front. So the scrutiny happens, it doesn't finish. We finish at about maybe 9, and we are told that we come back the following day, tomorrow, to carry on because there are some issues with the interpretation of the orders that were given by the courts. And then the next thing, when you turn up for the second day and you're told that the scrutiny finished because IB could not produce what you needed. And an hour after that, the High Court produces a report of the scrutiny that actually you're supposed to have been still doing that particular morning. So the question is, when was this report written? You hadn't concluded the scrutiny. An hour after they declare that it's been stopped because IBC would not provide some of the things that you needed, the report is out. And the report is out and does not capture the things that were deliberated during the scrutiny. So it raises a lot of questions whether there's impartiality, again, on the side of the judiciary, but that is not me to do the interpretation. I can only say what happened. I'm not going to dwell in the background. You know where we were and why the technology was introduced in the Kenyan election, what happened, the Kriegler Commission that led to the report that recommended the integration of IT in the Kenyan electoral process for registration, identification of voters, and transmission of the results. It's noteworthy to know that some of those are still manual. Some of them are also automated, like the registration of voters. And Washir already talked about the Section 44. The next slide. Section 44 of the Election Act that actually gives the guideline on how we should use the technology to manage the Kenyan elections, and it mandates IBC, for example, to develop a policy of progressive use of technology in the electoral process. So as part of the scrutiny, one of the things that we are quite interested in were looking at the ICT policies within the IBC and whether they were up to date and what is it that was in there. And as I'll say later on, this was hampered because most of these policies or what was requested by the court to be given were not given. And the ones which were given were outdated. So for example, anybody who is here knows that the ICT policies changes quite dramatically, and every year they need to be reviewed. You'll find out some of them that you were given were 5 years old. So they're actually obsolete. Transparently procure and use of the technology, test, verify, and deploy. Washira talked about the tests that they're supposed to perform, and for example, they're supposed to do performance testing, they're supposed to do what is called penetration testing, they're supposed to do something called operational acceptance testing, a lot of other tests that they're supposed to do. And actually these things should be documented so that when there is, for example, a petition like we had in 2017, then we should be able to get documentation with regard to the results of these tests which were done. Later on, we were only given what is called the penetration tests. That was the only thing that you were given. Any other results of the test were not given. So this made IBC to develop a technology known as Integrated Electoral Management System, KIMS, which makes Kenya electoral process a hybrid one. that we embrace both the technology and the manual processes in our election. These are the things that were before the court for the determination whether the IBC conduct of general election met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency to guarantee accurate, verifiable results, and whether there was interference with uploading, transmission of the forms from polling stations to the IBC portal, and finally, that third petition. But this is what I have to say. I think the entire process of the scrutiny was set to fail from the onset. Why am I saying that? So you walk to, for example, the IBC, or you walk into a room. Let's say you go to a room, you've never been to a house, and you need to do some inspection in that house. You don't know where the kitchen is, you don't know where the bedroom is, you don't know where the water tank is, you don't know where. The first thing that actually somebody should do, even before you start that verification, is giving you documents which are called architectural diagrams. Even providing something as simple as an architectural diagram was denied by IEBC. So you go there, you want to be able to see that when you're seeing the networks, for example, the traffic coming into their network, is it coming from a valid IP address? If you see users who are logged into the system, are they actually users that are authorized to use the system? And the only way you can tell me that if I'm an external is you have to give me a list of all the users within the organization and the level at which they're allowed to access those particular systems. And when I go now to do my scrutiny, I can go back and cross-check and say, okay, Otieno is there, he's an authorized user, and this is the level of access that he has on the system. Providing such a simple thing like this, we just wanted to see the users and what level of access do they have on the system, so that when I go into the system and I find them, I don't come up and say or make a conclusion that they are unauthorized. That, again, was not provided. Very simple things. So these are the orders which were sought, for example, were provision of the copies of the technology, which, with regard to the security policy and all those, the password policy, all the users who are using their systems, their level of access, any other thing, any other body that is connecting into their systems through what we call the application programming interface, so that we know, are these valid connections to the IEB systems, which is a critical system. They're supposed to give a supervised access, and this was a big one. I think I'll get to that. So we were supposed to get into the RTS, interrogate the RTS. RTS is where the Form 34As were being moved to when from the polling stations. They're supposed to be in the RTS server before they're published on the web portal. Again, getting that was a problem, and I'll talk about that just in a minute. We're supposed to be provided with a certified penetration test, copies of the penetration tests. Those were not given, and any other test that was conducted. The only thing that we got were 2 penetration tests, which they failed, out of the total of the 16 penetration tests that were carried out. The reason why they did not give the remaining 14 penetration tests is not for me to make a judgment, but you and me can make a guess as to why you would want not to give penetration test if it was carried out. And I'll get to that anyway in my... And then we also want, the court also granted the orders to see the partnership agreement. So we had this firm that was called Smartmatic, and we were just quite interested in knowing what was the partnership agreement between IEBC, for example, and the Smartmatic. Because the partnership agreements would spell a lot of things. What is it that they're supposed to do? What are the SLAs, the service level agreements they're supposed to provide the services for? And it was just good for us that we could go there and find out if they were meeting their SLAs, if there was value for money for what they were being used for doing. So for the orders 1, 3, and 4, They were mainly about giving documentations. And IBC partially provided documentation requested for orders 1, 3, and 4 after 36 hours from the time of court order. We were getting these documents on, that was on 31st at about 9 p.m. And remember I told you that was 31st. On 1st of September at about 9, we were supposed to convene again to continue with the scrutiny. And we were supposed to have looked at this and informed our councils or provide them with a report of what was done, what was supposed to, what had taken place. And we were getting this at about 9 p.m. We were getting them long after the so-called scrutiny had happened. The delay is not justified in my case and explained except for deliberate and willful frustration of court orders that were given by the court. Then there's one that they gave out. So we, for example, asked, give us the list of the users who are using the system. And this was an incriminating one, in my opinion, because the only thing that we got about the users who are accessing the system was a list of 41 national returning officers with access privilege to the system. And this, on the top of this list was somebody called Dixon Kwanusu. But when we checked these names, these 41 names, against the Gazette of the Returning Officers, which was published on 28th of April, these names were not there, but they had access. They were inserted in the list of users that were purportedly supposed to be having access to the IBC portal. So if they were not gazetted, then what were they doing as returning officers and having access to the IBC systems? So with regards to that particular order, we didn't get the password metrics, for example, to see how their passwords are. Are they weak? Are they strong enough that they could withstand the test of hacking? We couldn't get any details about the APIs. So a lot of things that we are not able to get from IBC. So these actually did not make us be able to do exactly what we would have wanted to do as a part of the scrutiny of the IBC systems. Documents that we got, for example, we could not validate them due to lack of provision of access to authentic servers used in the presidential election. Underline the word authentic because I'm going to talk about why we don't think that what was shown to us was authentic in the next few slides. So you find that most of the ICT policies that were given were obsolete. They were developed or created in 2017 January, and therefore they did not meet the international standard or best practice of being reviewed every year. In IT is very volatile. We have new threats and new vulnerabilities coming in and day, and that is the reason that things like your policies needs to be reviewed on a regular basis so that you can just make sure you counter any other thing that is, anything that is new as a threat to your system. So I would just say that on the basis of information and access provided, it was impossible to determine whether the technology deployed by IBC for the conduct of general election met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results. There's a lot of frustrations on the scrutiny a bit. This is the order number 2 where we are supposed to be given supervised access. So we met at 9, and between 9, we proposed that because the court had said that we are given what we call the forensic image of their RTS server, their lawyers came and refused that was not, they could not give that. And so we haggled until about 1 p.m. over the provision of this forensic server. We adjourned because it was a heated debate. We came back at about 2, and that is when we reached a compromise. We said, okay, what you're going to do is then one of the IBC staff was going to sit in front of a computer, do a projection, we sit around the table, and we tell them what to do. The reason why they were saying that they were not able to give the forensic server is because they are going to infringe on the IP, on the intellectual property of the Smartmatic, because they say the images of the NTC servers contain softwares owned and copyrighted by Smartmatic, and this is IP protected. Providing full access would infringe our intellectual property rights. I think already my colleague Washira talked about it a little bit, but if you go even into the Constitution, because we looked at this while I was doing the write-up, it's already covered. It's that is not correct, because Section 44, use of technology, if you go to, I don't know whether that is Section F, I don't know how lawyers say it, but Part F, the F bit of it, has already given access to the source code. Whatever IBC gets from whatever vendor, whatever, they already have intellectual property, including of the source code. And that is, if you can check, it's already there. So that excuse was really lame, and also did not make any sense. But anyway, we were not given the forensic image, because that would have made us to do the analysis ourselves. Key highlights. These are some of the things that you need to know. Whatever I talked about the authentic server, we don't believe that what was shown to us by the IBC was the server that was used on the 9th of August 2022. Why? First, it was created. When they run something called a virtual machine, it has what we call a metadata. The metadata would tell you when that particular machine was created. The machine that we are being shown was created on 31st August 2022 at 10:30 a.m. But that is what we are told was used to run the elections on 9th. So it existed after the election. You and me can guess as to why. Then I asked the fundamental question, because let me just do this. Oh. I wanted to show you the specifications of the server. So I asked them, so can we see the specifications of the server? And my computer that I'm running here is 32 gigabyte RAM of, the RAM memory of this computer here is 34 gigabytes. This computer, because I do a lot of things. Do you know what the specifications of what we are being shown was? Take a guess. You've even given them more. 6. And I asked again in the same room, so is it a single server? And they said, yes, it's only one machine that was used for the transmission. That one machine that is 6 gigabytes. And then the lady goes like, but it's just holding the PDFs. That's why it doesn't need to be a high-spec server. And then I go, so 36, we have 46,000 polling stations, which are going to be sending the PDF forms on a 6 gigabyte machine from all over the country, and you tell me it can manage that stress? It's absolutely impossible. But that's what we are told to believe, that is what was used for the scrutiny. Anyway, so what are some of the things that we observed? So my thinking is that they did the cloning of because the virtual machines, you can clone them. They cloned the live server, in my expert opinion, and then sanitized the clone, and that is what was presented. Why am I saying that it was sanitized? I'll give reasons why I think it was sanitized in the next few slides. Let me go. Are we on? No, just go back. Yeah, there. There were evidence of deletions. If you have, for those of you who are interested in the planes, there's something we call the black box, okay? And the way the black box is designed is that even if an aeroplane was to fall or have an accident, the black box is not supposed to be affected. Why? The black box audits everything that goes in the cockpit. And so when it comes to the investigation, when you want to investigate why probably there was an issue or what led to the accident, they go for the black box. We have the same in the computers. We have something we called the logs, but the most importantly is we have something called audit log. Audit log will tell me that Jim logged in at the system at this particular time, and Jim did A, B, C, D. He deleted one A, B, C, D. So that log is an equivalent to your black box. What you can see here, it's just that it's quite far away. I'm looking at the server, and somebody is deleting the audit log, or somebody is deliberately destroying the black box. Suppose I was to have, there was any issue or I needed to do any investigation, or the system just crashed, and I needed to know what could have led to the crash of the system. I'm not able to ascertain that because I've removed it's like removing all your traces. This is being done. This is a screenshot from scrutiny. Now, the most important thing, or the paradox, was that when the court wrote their report, they said that there was no deletions. Whereas in the scrutiny, we agreed that there were deletions, and we took the screenshot to verify that there were deletions. That audit log was deleted, sys logs were deleted. And so the question is, why would you say what did not happen? Because it happened, we said it happened, we provided the evidence that it happened, but then you write the report that is going to be used by the institution that you're working for to say that it did not happen. And the court is supposed to believe what you've written more than what I'm going to say. So as you can see there, the sys logs are being deleted, the audit logs are being deleted. This is a screenshot from the IBC. It's not my makeup. I didn't make up this. It was there. It was sent by the IBC themselves to all the ICT experts who are there. Now, I talked about earlier on us demanding for the documents. We were demanding for those documents for a good reason. I needed to see the list of all the users who have been authorized to use the system, so that when I go to the system, I'm able to ascertain whether this person is authorized to use the system or not. Now, these are users who are accessing the system. Their names, which had been flagged up by the CID. You can see their names. You've got Vito, you've got Ogunino, you've got Josio, we've got Jose Camargo. I can show Jose Camargo as well. But they're accessing the system. And one of the other things that we asked for, remember earlier on, I said we were walking into a dark room. We've come to look at this room, but we don't know where the kitchen is. We don't know where if we are doing the plumbing, we don't know where these things are. So we can see the IP addresses. Each and every computer has something called the IP address. So when they're accessing the systems remotely, what we are asking, what we needed to know, those IP addresses, where are they on the IBC network? Or if they have the partnership agreements, if they gave us, what is it that they've agreed on how to work? Are these users supposed to be given remote access? So these guys are remotely accessing the systems from wherever they are. And so I ask myself the question, and that's what I'm saying. I put this one here deliberately because this is on the 6th of August. And this is when those audit logs were deleted. So the question is, could it be Josio, could it be Ogudido, could it be Vito who accessed or were deleting those particular logs? It's a question that I ask myself as somebody who is doing the audit. But because you did not give me the documents that I asked for, I can only make inference with what I can see. So deletion of the system and audit logs compromises verifiability, security, accountability, and the transparency. So there was evidence of foreigners remotely, because these were known names because of the IBC, the CID interception at the JKIA, so they were known names, they are there. There was evidence of foreigners remotely accessing the system before and after the election. Given that we were not provided with a list of users and their level of access, it was impossible to discern whether these were authorized or unauthorized access. What were these users doing during the election tallying process? So you can see this one. This screen here is another screen for the access, but during, just before, during, and slightly after the election. And the question is, what is it that they were actually doing at that particular point in time in the systems? It is not me to make the conclusion. I can only report on what I saw during the scrutiny. There are no user access request forms to support the creation of aforementioned accounts. So as an IT guy, anybody I see there should be a process in which they get into the system. So maybe they fill in a form. That form has to be signed by the relevant officers. And then it goes to the IT team. Then they create those accounts. And that should be something that if I was to come to do the audit, I should be able to find out that has been done. And in this particular case, I have users. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what whatever. I can only say that they are unauthorized users in the system. There's much that I can talk about that, but I'm just giving highlights. I think there's more information on the report that we have. Let me give the highlights on the order number three. This was the test. They're supposed to furnish us with all the tests that they've done. We were only given the penetration test. There was no performance test that was given. There was no OAT test that was given. Out of these penetration tests, we understand that they're using a company called Sereniao, and they did 16 performance tests. We were only given 2 reports of those tests. Of those 2 tests that they did, they failed. As in, the test revealed weaknesses in the system. So if you want to know what penetration test is just testing your system against vulnerabilities and threats. So we take your system and we give, for example, we give it to the company that is doing the test, and they try to hack the system. That is what is penetration. So, and the reason we do this is so that we can know where the weaknesses are in the system. Now, they did 16. They concealed 14 results or reports and only gave 2. So the 2 that they gave, what we expected by the time we were doing the scrutiny is that we should have seen what we call the remedial actions towards the weaknesses that have been pointed out by the penetration tests. We were not furnished with any remediation action with regards to the threats that had been, the weaknesses that had been identified by the penetration test in the penetration test report. And so the only deduction I can make is that you can only hold something if it is incriminating. So maybe they failed those 14, I don't know. Maybe they failed those 14 penetration tests and did not action them, or for whatever reason, we were not given those 14 penetration tests. So no explanation was provided by IBC for the failure to provide other 14 penetration tests. An inference, therefore, could be drawn that such reports, if any, were adverse to IBC, as it is likely to have failed the other 14 penetration tests and not implemented the recommended remediation measures. I said all the documents you were given were outdated. They were all dated 26 January 2017, and therefore, in our terms, they are obsolete. No partners. This was they were supposed to give us the partnership agreements, and this is where, for example, you wanted to see the agreement they had with the Smartmatic, SafariCom, or any other party that they're dealing with. None of them. That one they flatly refused. It could also have made us to look at the procurement. We also wanted to look at the procurement documents. Those were completely told was out of the way. So failure to avail the partnership agreements made it impossible to understand and evaluate the SLAs in order to determine the involvement of the technical partners in the supply, management, and support of the electoral technology. The failures to provide with a list of users, trail, admin access made it impossible to evaluate the access control and to determine authorized and unauthorized access, privilege access abuse, if there's anybody who is abusing their privilege, and interference, and verification of the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results. That is the first bit of the IBC's the scrutiny. I'm going to go on to the second part, which is a work which is in progress. There were prayers that we be allowed to look at the register of voters. That was to scrutinize that. It was not granted. And so we went the other way around it. So we requested for the PDF, we requested for the voter register, which was given in PDF. Once you have the PDF, there's a way you can reverse engineer. And this is where Washira was saying that justice should be cheap. But the amount of work we had to do to get this PDF in a form that we can now use to give you to give the analysis we are doing has been a lot of effort has gone into that. So we had to do something called reverse engineering. So we took the PDFs, we had to create what we call the CSVs out of them, and out of those CSVs, we were able to deploy this in a database, and we've been able to run some queries. And we have very interesting results on this. And this is something that was given by the IEBC themselves. So we are not actually saying that, you know what, it's something that we got from somewhere. It's something that has come from the IEBC. So one of the areas Kriegler focused on was the lack of credible, accurate, and reliable register of voters. In fact, he says that without a credible, clean, and verified register of voters, the people of Kenya are denied their right to exercise their sovereign power. So when we did this, we took the PDF, put them into CSVs, put them into analytical tool, a database analytical tool, and our aim was to identify any duplicate records, identify any orphaned or incomplete records, confirm the existence of relevant details required under the law, that is the name, ID, gender, biometric information, and polling station, among other details. Yeah. So in this analysis, the work is still in progress. It will cover all the 22,102,532 voters presented by the IEBC. One of the things that we can say is already there's the discrepancy. You'll find that in some of the counties, for example, the schema is different with the other counties. The schema is just the metadata that describes the voter. What information are you keeping about the voter? We call it the metadata. So for some of them, they're very rich. For some of them, is not very rich. But what was published by the IBC was 22,102,532. After we've ingested our data from the CSVs that we converted from the PDFs, we are getting a total of 22,430,601. And you can see there's a discrepancy there of about 328,069 votes, which brings the issue of accuracy of the register. And these are where the discrepancies were. The next slide. And I'll just go through this quite quickly because we'll have another session. This session was not so much about the register of voters, yeah. But these are some of the summary of the findings. So multiple users who have multiple IDs used multiple times. We've got about 273,739 in a hotly contested election like the one we had before. This could tilt the results if it was anything. I don't think they're small figures. For the voters that had either names used as the ID or the ID numbers not conforming to the NRB requirements, or names comprising IDs comprising of alphabets and numerics, a lot of them are there. So the voters, there are also those on which the voter records do not conform to the eligibility criteria set out in the Constitution. So you'll, for example, find an ID like M, a letter F used as an ID, and it's been used to register numerous voters. You've got an ID like F, and it's been used to register numerous voters. You've got an ID like 0, and it's been used to register numerous voters. We definitely know that 0 cannot be an ID number. We definitely know, me and you know, that M cannot be an ID number. F cannot be an ID number. So why then is it being used to register voters? Yeah, right? So F used for numerous voters, M used for numerous voters. Yeah? Voters who are born in 1850, they should not be alive by now. 0 used as voters, 100 used as voters, 1 used as an ID, okay? Names used as IDs, Vivian, whatever, they are all there. And that cannot be the case. That is, there's a reason why I rushed on those particular slides, because it's not, they have personal details of individuals, which is protected by the law. And so in summary, this is what I would say. BVR kits, just based on some of the things or whatever, the BVR kits actually are supposed to have embedded controls that should not allow some of these things to happen. You cannot go to a Safaricom shop to register your SIM card with an ID that is not in the NRB register. The question I'm asking, if you're registering our voters, why can't we plug into NRB database, and when somebody presents their ID, you check against the NRB that those particular information is there, and then you validly register someone. So the BVR kits do not have any input controls to enforce requirements over the validity of voter eligibility documents, national identity documents, or even the passport. That's why we can see MF1, 100, some funny names or whatever being used, or people's name being used as IDs. As a result, it is possible to capture invalid details and particulars in the BVR systems, e.g. alphabetic characters in ID number field and numeric characters in the passport field. So this preliminary findings proves register of voters, the substrum of election is not verifiable, has no integrity, is hosted in an open, insecure database which is open to manipulation and has multiple records, multiple errors, including duplicated records, as I've just shown earlier on. That is me.